Hi there, this is Chrissy Hodges. Normally I don't go live 2 times in 1 week, so I just want you to know that. I did a live video earlier this week on mental health and the mighty. You can check it out over on their Facebook site. But I wanted to go live today just to quickly do a video about some of the stuff that's been circulating in the news stories. The 2 tragic suicides that are high profile, so they're plastered everywhere, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, just to address it from an advocate standpoint, but also to talk to my fellow OCD sufferers who live with the intrusive thought of fearing suicide. This is not something that I've addressed yet in one of my videos on YouTube, but it is a very common and very important one because it is just as traumatic and tormenting as any of the others. I am going to talk a little bit about the tragedy and how it makes me feel when I see things in the news. So if you do have the OCD fear of suicide, I just want to let you know that I may say some things that may make you feel a little bit triggered, but I'm just giving you a little bit of a warning before. For me, whenever I hear about this, you know, it is not as if I am not aware that suicides occur every day. It is a pandemic. And there is not much that's being done to address it. There is the call the helpline and, oh, just reach out for help. And it's just not that easy. It's not that easy when the symptoms are so complex of mental illness, but also the shame, embarrassment, and guilt is just as debilitating, just as tormenting as symptoms. So a lot of people who do not have mental health issues don't understand how people can get so far down that they feel like suicide is their only option. The only thing that I can tell you is that it's probably impossible for you to understand unless you've seen somebody close to you go through it or have been present when someone is in that state of mind. That's probably the closest that you could get to it. And I realize and understand that a lot of people don't understand why it is that people feel like suicide is an option. Well, the simplest answer to that is that mental health, that is part of having a mental health brain disorder. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be this, necessary ending or whatever, but a lot of people do not understand that they even have mental health symptoms, number one. So oftentimes, especially in younger ages, people will attempt or die by suicide even though they're suffering with a mental health illness and they don't know. This is why education is so important. I am a suicide attempt survivor. If I had known that I was living with a brain disorder and a mental illness, it would not have gotten to that point. I would have reached out for help. I would have done the necessary research to find the right person to help me, the right tools, or the right medication. That's where we are really, really, really failing the younger generations. We are not educating people on symptoms, and oftentimes they get so deep into it, they don't feel like they have a way out. Second of all, another piece is that stupid damn stigma that I've still seen going around today about this bullshit about people are weak and they're cowards and, oh my gosh, you just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, fuck off. Seriously. And sorry for the F-bomb, but I'm not really apologizing. I guess I just did. But I just get so sick of that because that is so dismissive. And it's so non-empathetic to what really the struggle and the debilitating torture that people go through on a daily basis. Do you actually think that people want to die by suicide? Do you actually think that they just wake up one day and they go, oh, I'm just gonna take the coward's way out today? Like, get a fucking life. Seriously. I mean, people are suffering at times for years, decades. It's a perpetual loss of hope that sometimes people just don't know what to do. Oftentimes they don't know that they're ill, but another thing is they don't have the resources to get help. our system here in our country sucks when it comes to mental health. So people think to themselves, well, I'm not going to call, or I'm not going to go into the hospital. I'm not going to go to a crisis center, because what if they put me on a hold? I have to go to work. I can't go on a hold right now. So people don't reach out for help. Not to mention the states where people call for help and then they're handcuffed and thrown in the back of the cop cars and treated like criminals. Sorry, but we have a lot of work to do in the system, and that's a huge reason why people don't reach out for help. Another thing is, again, to continue with the stupid stigma that I won't curse about anymore, sorry, is that when people, even if they're feeling okay in their symptoms, or they're in a spot where it's not bothering them, and something like this happens, and then all of a sudden they see all their loved ones and their friends posting about how people are weak and stupid and cowards and selfish for dying by suicide, do you actually think those people are going to reach out for help after they see your stupid, insensitive, ridiculous comments? Do you think they will? No, they won't, because they don't really want someone to be like, oh, you're selfish because 24/7 symptoms are making you feel so miserable you can't move. Just so you know, if you don't have a mental health problem, you're still contributing by writing those ridiculous, stupid fucking comments. Yep, said it again. Don't care. So with that, I don't know how I could say that any softer and get my point across. For me, when I hear about these, when it comes into the news, I remember, and you may remember in seeing some videos of mine last year, just how deeply affected I was when Chester Bennington died by suicide. And it's not as if I'm not affected when other people do, but there was something about his death that really, really affected me. Number one, because the music that band and he in particular would sing about really helped me in my own recovery to move past a lot of really difficult things. Some of the things that come up for me when I see these high profile, splashed all over the news, suicides is, you know, I think to myself, if, you know, and most of us do, we say, if these people, you know, they're hugely successful, they're wildly, you know, their careers have taken off wildly, and if they get to this point, well, doesn't that mean that I might? If they can't make it, does that mean that I can't make it? And what if I snap? Suicidal thoughts are part of my symptoms. I know this now in my own recovery. So I know that when I'm getting suicidal thoughts, I need to ask for help. I need to do some therapy. I need to get back on medication. I need to talk to my support system. Not everybody knows that. So if someone is experiencing suicidal thoughts and they don't understand that, yes, this could be a warning that you need to get help, they may just clam up and get scared when they see these things on the news, because they think, oh my gosh, if that person could do it, what if I could? And what if they just snapped and did it? Or what if they just lost control and that could happen to me? And that can really, really, really exacerbate things for people. So with everything that I've said, even some of the little aggressive things earlier, it probably makes a lot of us feel helpless. And I feel helpless often as a mental health advocate. I talk to people often that are struggling, that feel suicidal, or they're scared of it. And I feel helpless because I don't see a lot of support. I don't see a lot of people speaking out about it. And I see these horrible posts, like I was explaining earlier, that just stigmatize and do not create easy paths for people to ask for help. But here's what I want you to know. Just because that stuff goes on, that bullshit over here, doesn't mean we can't do different things. Doesn't mean, and I posted this earlier on my Facebook, and I just want to emphasize, mental health awareness and being available for somebody if they are feeling suicidal and they need help doesn't necessarily mean that you do have to shout it from the rooftops, you know, that you are a mental health advocate or whatever. But what you can do is talk to people around you. And a great way to do that right now is to talk to the people that you love about this, about what just happened and that's in the news stories, and say, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever been affected in this way? And if so, what can I do to support you? Or if you felt this way, you can share with somebody. You know, Anthony Bourdain and Kate Spade, both of them took their lives. And I have felt this way before. And sometimes I need support. This opens up doors. It opens up conversations, because I am going to tell you, if somebody is feeling suicidal, or if they see something like this, or if they're just triggered and suicidal, and then they find out that somebody is empathetic, that they can go to somebody and get support, someone that will listen to them, someone that will take them seriously, they will remember that the next time they're in a crisis. Trust me, I have been there. And I know what that feels like to know, I'm looking right now. I just saw Corey Hirsch. I saw Felice Becker. I know those people because they have an open dialogue about suicide. I know if I went to them and said, I don't know what to do, I'm feeling suicidal, they would know how to respond in a way that wasn't about them. They would make it about supporting me and supporting my needs and how to get me to that help. So this is, it feels helpless, but it's an easy fix by establishing yourself as somebody that people can trust, establishing yourself as somebody that people can come to and know that you will believe them, you will support them, and that you will do whatever is possible to help them get to the help that they needed. It saves lives. Another thing we can do, keep talking about it. When things like this happen, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of what can we do, blah, 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 for the next week or so. Then it dies down until the next time. Y'all know me, I'm talking about every day. So you don't have to be like that. But it is important to keep the conversation going. It is important. Talk to the schools in your neighborhood. Talk to the kids in your neighborhood, your neighbors. See what y'all can do to spread awareness. Join a local NAMI chapter. Do what you can to start saying, I'm going to do something, because all it takes is one person, and then another will join, and then another, and then all of a sudden, everybody is aware that we need to do something about mental health and the subsequent suicides that are happening. This is a big issue. And so we need to band together. It is not that hard. And if we all work together, we can really make a difference. Thank you for letting me vent about that. If any of you are offended by the F-bombs that I dropped earlier, we can talk about it later. I'm very passionate about that. Okay. I wanted to address really quickly, I've been reached out to by many, many people who are living with the intrusive thoughts of fearing suicide that have obsessive compulsive disorder. If you follow my videos, or if you understand OCD at all, what happens is you get an intrusive thought that is accompanied by anxiety, and someone will do a compulsion in order to bring that anxiety down. The type that I have is nicknamed pure OCD. This is where typically you're going to have unwanted, sometimes taboo, intrusive thoughts that really terrify you. Often they're of a sexual, violent, blasphemous nature, but it can run the gamut, just so you know. That mind can do a lot of things. And all of the compulsions are mental. So you can be dealing with these intrusive thoughts that are absolutely kicking your butt. And you can have a smile to the whole world, but you're doing compulsions like 24/7. I could be doing compulsions right now and you wouldn't even know it. So one of the biggest fears is the fear of dying by suicide. A lot of times this fear manifests in the way of, what if I snap? What if I lose control? I don't want to die by suicide, but I can't stop thinking about it, so does that mean I really am? Oftentimes when people get this intrusive thought, they will start to do things like, for instance, and if you're watching this and you have this fear, I bet you did this today. You will start Googling the people that are on these high-profile news stories, and you'll start trying to find out why it is they died by suicide. Why do you do that? It's a compulsion, because you want to find out if their life is similar to you, if you were having the same problems, because if they could do it, that must mean that I can do it. You know, some of the things that you're going to do is you're going to see all these news stories and, oh, this is the worst. And this just doesn't have to do with this type. This is all kinds of types of OCD or themes for OCD. You will see a story on suicide and you look at it and you go, well, I want to click on it because I want to read it to make sure that it's going to prove that I'm not going to die by suicide. But then you're like, no, I don't want to, because if I click on it, I know things will get worse. So I'm going to tell you, either way, you're screwed. Isn't that the truth? You click on it, it's going to trigger you. You don't click on it, it's going to trigger you. It's so awful. So I wanted to just share some tips with you. Well, before I share some tips, I just wanted to tell you that also it's important to keep in mind when you are living with OCD and you're living with intrusive thoughts like this, when these things splash across the news, this is a trigger. Of course, you're going to dive deeper into that intrusive thought. The same way when the Me Too movement came through, a lot of people, because there were a lot of stories about pedophilia, a lot of people who have pedophilia themed OCD, which is the fear of turning into a pedophile, a lot of people got triggered because they'd read these news stories and say, oh my gosh, well, if they can do it, that must mean that I am. And what if it's this? And what if it's that? The same way with homosexual themed OCD. Again, it is not homophobia. It's the fear of turning gay when you're not gay. And the reverse of that is someone who lives a homosexual life, fear of turning straight. So if the same thing, sorry, I think I have a cat hair on my eye. You might be able to see it. If someone comes out of the closet, maybe they have been in the closet for a long time, or if they've been married, that can trigger that intrusive thought as well. So I do want to remind you, and this is a little reassurance, I do want to remind you that this is part of what you're suffering with and you have been triggered. So some tips, and I wrote some of this down, and these are some of the things that I do. Okay, it's going to be hard, but choose not to click on the stories. Again, as I said earlier, it's going to be, well, you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't. Well, you'd rather be screwed if you don't, if that's not going to perpetuate the cycle, right? Because clicking on news stories about this is just a compulsion. So if you're doing compulsions, you're making things worse. So choosing not to click on it, yes, it is going to bear down on your head, and you're going to go, well, maybe I should go, like, well, what if there's something in there that proves this? What if there's something that tells me that? But it's so much better than actually clicking and just making that cycle a lot worse. I know it's hard. Trust me. I've had a lot of health OCD stuff lately, and let me tell you, it's really difficult for me not to click on stuff. Do an exposure instead. If you have not gone through ERP with an OCD therapist or professional, I'm not saying to do ERP on your own, because I do not support that. But an exposure without doing ERP could just be, I don't know. I guess, like, I don't want to go into that, because all of a sudden that would be okay. If you've been through ERP, and then I'll say something about the other. If you've been through ERP and you are being triggered and you have this urge to, I'm going to click on this, or I'm going to read this, stop yourself and do an exposure instead. Whatever your therapist has instructed you to do, or whatever you've done in the past that has helped, do that instead. You're not going to want to, because nobody wants to do exposures. You're going to want to read the article, because the article, you think the article is going to tell you something you don't know. It won't. Just trust me. So do an exposure instead. Now, if you've not been through ERP, which I cannot say to do any exposures if you haven't, but if you cannot, and I also don't want to promote like doing compulsions, but the best thing that you could do if you haven't been through ERP, distraction is an is a compulsion, but whatever. If you are really that triggered and you're sitting there in front of a computer and you've been Googling for 8 hours and you think, I'm just going to do one more article. What if you just closed the computer and said, or maybe I could go for a walk, or maybe I could watch my favorite TV program, or maybe I could take my dog out, or maybe I could go buy myself an ice cream as a reward for not clicking on the article. It is possible to stop. It feels like you can't choose that because your brain is driving you and telling you, no, you have to do this, you have to do this. You can choose. That is the part about OCD. OCD will say you don't have a choice, but you do. And lastly, when things like this happen, limit your time on social media. I have to tell myself this all the time. Trust me. When especially in regards to when mass shootings and school shootings happen, and all of a sudden the huge argument comes up of mental illness versus guns and all that. When that happens, I have to just click off. I cannot be there because I cannot get engaged because it just messes with my head. You know, I may check back every once in a while, but one of the things I do is structure it. So as this is happening and you're having this fear of the intrusive thoughts of, you know, what if I attempt or die by suicide? What you can do is say, you know, for the next week or so, this is going to be all over the news. So what if, instead of I'm going to click on just, you know, and just look and not have any sort of limit, you say, I'm only going to check social media 3 times today for 10 minutes. That way you're committing to doing something, and then if you commit, oftentimes you will follow through because it's a commitment you've made to yourself. And that way it limits the time and it limits how many compulsions you'll do in response. So I hope that helps. I would like to do a video that's way more in depth about the fear of attempting or dying by suicide, because I know it's something that many, many, many of you struggle with. And I know that things like this happen and are splashed all over the news and they just make you feel miserable. But I can't really make things better for you other than offering some of the tips that help me when I'm triggered. But I can let you know that this is a common fear, and I can let you know that you are not alone. I promise you that. I know it feels like it when you're in the middle of this, but you are not. If you are out there and you are watching this video and you are feeling suicidal, whether it be the fear of attempting or dying by suicide, or whether it be I am actually suicidal and I am creating a plan, please reach out to someone that you know you can go to, that will listen, that will believe you. Tell them what you need. It's also 50-50. When I am having suicidal thoughts, I contact my support system. I tell them what I need. If you hear my dog snoring, I'm sorry. It's so loud. Anyway, yeah, if you don't know of anybody already like that, please reach out and just say, I need you to listen. I need some help. If you're going to go talk to a professional, there are crisis centers, there are crisis hotlines, there are places that you can go to get the help that you need. But just know, I hate the phrase, this is a permanent, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Okay, because there are many of us who mental health is not temporary. Sorry, but it is your whole life. So recognize that, yes, this may not be the first time you reach out for help. This may not be the first time you go to a crisis center, but anything that you do to push back on your mental illness is a success, because you are taking steps toward recovery. Okay? So as hard as it is, and I just did a video on Mental Health and the Mighty about how hard it is for me to ask for help, I want you to know you're not alone. I have been in the depths where I thought suicide was the only answer. So many other people have too. Do not listen to the dumb asses that get on there and say really stupid stuff about what suicide really is, because they really know. We know, we understand, and so many people are out there that can help, empathize, listen, and support. I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing you next week with another video.